So today, everybody, we are talking about co-parenting difficulties, right? And I'm gonna say this: if the person you're co-parenting with is with you, um, or not with you, but if they are able to receive things from you, send them this episode. Y'all should probably listen to it together because there's so much information that we can give and perspectives from both sides on these co-parenting difficulties. And so I really think that we really want to take the time and make the effort to help families get better. And this is going to be one of those episodes where you're like, oh, we should listen to this together. And even if y'all came together, listen to it separately,
Right.
but just take the information.
Right. Because it may be what they still can't stand each other, which is a reality. However, sometimes hearing a word from somebody else, allows for a better listening ear. So share is caring. So share.
Yes. All right. So we were talking about a couple of things. So, there's always scheduling issues. There's always, who's going to pick them up? Who's going to drive them? In my case, are we meeting at the halfway mark? Because there's a 50-mile difference. And sometimes I feel like I'm always giving more. I'm always going that extra mile. And I think sometimes his perspective is, but you're coming out here anyway, which I'm not. I'm not always coming out there anyway. But when I do, I don't want to be the jerk that be like, well, still meet me at the halfway mark and then we all on the freeway together, going back to where, in that other direction. And so I think that when we're co-parenting, we have to remember that sometimes we just have to take one for the team, right? The team of me and my kid, not necessarily the three of us, but the team of me and my kid. What's going to make it easier for the children? What is going to, get this to be a smooth sailing thing? But it's also not allowing yourselves to be bullied by the other parent in the sense that, well, I'm not doing it. So if you ain't going to do it, then you keep them. If you don't want, you know what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense, Danielle?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It is a fine line. It's a difficult line to try to determine, depending on the situation, what had already happened. You know what I mean? And also just the dynamics of that co-parenting relationship in general. So there is that space and place in regards to, I'm gonna go ahead and do this because my child, how it may affect or impact my child. And that's something that all parents should always keep it on the forefront. You should always have what is best for my child. Yes. And it may be more times than not, what is best for your child may not necessarily be what you want to do. But then there's the other part of it is like, okay, if I'm always doing the best for my child, which I should, however, doing the best for my child more times than not is doing what the other parent should be doing.
Right.
And so with that, there's various things that should be addressed, and they may already be addressed or have been addressed, or maybe that ongoing repetitive conversation. And it should be a conversation and discussion, not an argument. But with that, it's like you're setting the boundaries for yourself of what you're willing to do and what you're not going to do. And this kind of goes into your child learning that difficult yet realistic lesson about their parent. Because when they're younger, for the most part, did it get you? When they're younger, it's like, okay, mommy or daddy is great and all these things, but as they begin older, they become more aware of certain things. They're more putting two and two together, and it's like, oh, mommy did this or daddy did this, and it don't sound right, it didn't look right, it didn't feel right. So as they get older, and I always tell parents between that 10 and up, that is where the relationship with your child and that parent, it shifts.
Yes.
It shifts. And not in a bad way, but just because your children are getting older. And so things you did with them at 5 ain't gonna roll over at 10, 11, 12. They're gonna look at you like, well, I'm not a baby. Daddy, I'm not a baby.
Yes.
Mom, I'm not a baby anymore. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So with that, those hard truths about the other parent or even yourself, they become more noticeable. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing in the sense that it allows you to show and model for your child that you're not perfect.
Yes.
And you are in the space and the place to be able to work on certain aspects of you. Hopefully both parents are able to do this, but at the same time, we're all human. We are all at different places. So if you have a situation, actually, I did a counseling session. I'm not breaking any confidentiality because I'm not saying who or what the person is. However, the situation is an ongoing conversation related to anything related to their child together. Picking up, dropping off, events, school events, all of it. And my client is tired of it. You know, my client's been doing it since baby's been born. Baby's no longer babies. Baby's adolescent now. And it's irritating. It's frustrating. And it's just makes you want to cuss. So with that, what do you do? You know, and it's that hard truth where the baby, now adolescent, is putting two and two together. This parent does not do this thing ever. Why? You know, there's questions that come with it. And
so I want to real quick, because you've made 3 points, and I'm like, ooh, and I don't want anybody to skip.
No, go ahead.
Right?
Keep on talking.
So, because we were talking about doing what's best for the child, right? Like, and sometimes that's our default, right? I know that's my default. What's going to be best for my daughter? However, sometimes what's best for your child is teaching them how other people are supposed to treat you.
Yes.
Right. Correct. And so sometimes you can't just give in. Sometimes you have to just give a hard no. But
it's not about giving in, though. You know, it's never about giving in.
No, not giving in. Did I say giving in? I didn't mean giving in.
Yes, you did.
Jumping in the Wayback Machine, about 10 seconds. All right. So not giving in, but giving a hard stop. Like, you know what? I'm always the one to sacrifice. And today I'm not doing that. I'm always the one. And I think to your last point about the other parent, you know, I think the other parent gets comfortable when one parent is constantly doing it. The other person gets very comfortable. And then it's like, well, how come you can't keep doing it? You've been doing it. Well, because I don't want to. And that should be a legit reason. But at the same time, if it's a work schedule thing, like this person is always at work during these times, and now you decide you're not doing it, that's not what's best for your kid, even if you are tired. But if they are, you know, if it's an agreement of, you know, you pick them up on, you know, these days, and now I just don't I'm like, bring them to me this time. Like, I'm always picking them up. That's my gas. That's my time. Sometimes you do have to go, okay, I'm going to do a hard stop on this because I get to say, I don't want to do that. I get to say, you know what? I get it. It's been working for the last year, but it's never really worked for me. I just was making a sacrifice, and I can't do that right now. I got to choose me today. And I think that as it relates to the other parent or your child discovering who the other parent really is, there's the facts of, did you ask your mom? Did you ask her again? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not to beg the parent, but it's, why do you always keep coming to me, right? If I'm mom or if I'm dad and I'm the custodial parent, let me just say it that way. If I'm the custodial parent, I'm giving all the time. The non-custodial parent gets to go to work, come home, and they don't have to pick up the second career of parenting and dinners and making sure everything is ready for the next day and school supplies. And you know what I mean? Even if you guys are splitting the financial piece, there is an ever-present day in, day out piece that people don't get to share because the kids are not living in the same household. And so sometimes our kids rely on us because we are the ever-present parent. And then people used to say to me, you will never have to speak bad about them because she's going to discover the parts that irritate you eventually anyway. And I've heard other parents say, other moms in particular, because, you know, usually kids stay with the mom. So it's not that I don't have single father friends. It's just that I'm referring to this. I've heard other moms, whether it's a son or a daughter, say, eventually they discovered who the parent is. I never had to speak bad about them. I do have a couple of fathers who say the same thing. I never had to speak bad about their mom because they saw for themselves. Not just with Christmas gifts, right? Because one Christmas gift, or even if we don't celebrate Christmas, you know what I'm saying, that there are families that one celebrates, the other parent doesn't, so you don't get the gifts from that other parent. But what about school pictures? What about wanting to go to your friend's house? What about, who's going to take the drive? If I'm always doing the drive to friends' parties and things like that, and you're like, well, I'm not doing it. They see that. They eat, and they might not see it in the beginning. Lord knows, as a mom, I protect my daughter from the things that I think will hurt her feelings about her father, right? And I don't know if he does that. We had a conversation last night, and he was like, if she tells me something about you, I try to talk her through it. I'm like, but still let me know. Like, don't have my kid out here mad at me about something and I have no idea because she hasn't communicated it with me. But she gets to tell you about it because she's comfortable sharing that information with you. It's easier, right? And as the parents, we're supposed to go back and forth and go, hey, this is what she's feeling. Maybe not call a family meeting, but sometimes it's just a regular conversation.
Right. So a couple of things that you hit on. So one, I'm going off the most recent before I forget that one, but it's like closing the loop, kind of like on your Apple Watch. I'm assuming everybody got Apple products, but anyways, it's like
I'm Samsung, and they can feel free to sponsor.
Right, but closing the loop in. There are a lot of times where we don't want to talk to the other parent, but it is vital. And our kids see from day one. They may not necessarily communicate what they see, but they see it and they know it. And it kind of goes to the next thing that any child, I don't care if parents are together or not together, that child is going to go to the parent where they know they're going to be able to get the thing. And the thing is whatever that they want to need at that time. So. Yeah. And even more so when you have the custodial parents, you are the go-to, whomever that is. You are the go-to. You may even have where your child is on their visit with their other parent, and they're texting you, asking you, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, you're there, ask that parent, right. But that's not their default. That's not their norm. Their norm is to ask the custodial parents permission to do things. You may find more times than not that, unfortunately, things that they know that the custodial parent more than likely will say no to, they're asking the other parent.
Right.
A child being a child, they know better, and they know who to go to when they know what they need versus they know who they go to when they want something. A clear difference, and they're very aware of that. So that's just a child being a child regardless. It doesn't make it okay, but that's how children function. The other part though is when the 50-50 ain't 50-50. It ain't, I won't say this. I was going to say it's never 50-50, but whenever you have a situation where is where the legal, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dog, but she having a feel, I guess her back is itching and she's rolling around carpet. But anyways.
So we couldn't hear that.
Okay, I was like, what's going on down there? So, but with that, unless literally everything is 50-50, which a lot of times it really isn't.
Mm-hmm. Even when you're married, it's never 50-50.
I would agree with that as well. So even with that being said, it's basically what you said, it's not 50-50. There's always going to be one parent doing something more in a certain aspect or a certain capacity than the other parent. Right. And that's not necessarily always default a bad thing. It may be a tiresome thing. It may be a frustrating thing. Don't get me wrong. But the other parent may do more in another capacity as well. I'm not saying this is default how every co-parenting dynamic is. I'm just saying in general, just to provide perspective that you may be really good at something. That may be your thing. And that other parent may be allowing you to do your thing because they know that they can't do that. Hopefully there's something that they can do, that
right.
balancing it out. However, in some co-parenting relationships and dynamics, there's other parents that or the other parent, I should say, that are providing something in a different capacity that you may not necessarily do well in or even want to do. But there are those situations where they're not, that the custodial parent is taking on the majority of the stuff.
And I think it's okay. I think it's healthy, not just okay, but very healthy to say, hey, you know what? I need you to step up. I need you to take on some more of these because I'm exhausted. If you get to go home at the end of your workday and just do you, but I got to come home and I have to do me and, children, then I need you to step it up. I need you to get them, a couple of days out the week. Right, do the pickup so that I don't have to lose
what I was going to say, because with that, there's that part of how you're communicating it. You'll be shocked on how you can say something one way and you get defensive and then push back right away. Like, I ain't doing that. And then you
because of what they heard versus what you said. Yes.
Right. But sometimes it's what they heard because what they heard was what was said. So like when you said, like, I need you to step up. Granted,
but the person might hear you not doing enough. Like if you say I need you to step up.
That's our point. Like you said you need to step up and saying obviously you ain't doing what you need to be doing. But there's that part of
but they hear it in a tone. Right. Like you may not mean it that way, but I think that like what is audibly said and what a person is actually hearing are very different. Like if you tell me I need to step up and I'm hearing that I'm a bad parent, I get what you're saying because you're going word for word, but it's still not how people internalize things.
Sure. But also there's an aspect of just so there are my words. Let's try it one more time. The delivery of how you're communicating it. So
yes.
I always like to give, or I won't say always, I like to give phrases that you can pull from when you're communicating related to sensitive subjects or difficult subjects. And this is one of them. And it could be, I need help. With you doing this, which so what you said, getting our baby, child, adolescent, whatever, picking up Sam. Let's go with Sam. I don't know who Sam is, but picking up Sam Monday, Wednesday, Friday from school will be very helpful. And with that, it's kind of like you're throwing out all these nice words per se. If there's any denial of that, it just truly confirms. I don't even know if you can cuss on a podcast, but that person's an ASS. So, if they're, and not to say that if they're not able
people
to
like, I heard a show where she said some bad words before.
But with that, it's like, there is that always, but putting out there, it'd be helpful if, and that if is, and what you're putting on that if, it needs to be realistic.
Right.
It can't be like where I was doing all this, now I'm giving it all to you. That'll be nice, but that's not realistic.
Right.
And it also could be what they should be doing. You know what I mean? So when you're having these conversations, or if you want to, like, how do I put this into words? How should I say this? That's how you should say it. It'd be helpful if, and then whatever that is, like I said, remember that whatever that is needs to be realistic.
Right. So don't say it'd be helpful if you did the laundry, but at your house and, to keep picking them up from school. Like, what you want the kids to do with the laundry bag? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
But the flip side, you could say, listen, I have to go to a laundry mat. It would be helpful if, you would come and at least help me get the clothes there and help me get them back. Like, I don't mind washing them, but it's a lot to get, especially if I live upstairs and I got to carry them downstairs. Like, all those things play a role. And it's okay. I think that sometimes, and remember, we talk about egg and sperm, right? Those are the only two people that get to say something. If you're in a relationship with a person that's like, she could do it herself or he could do it himself, tell that person they're not an egg or a sperm. And this is an agreement that the egg and the sperm made. Because that's another part. Well, why you got to go help her get the laundry down? Because it's 3 kids and it's 9 loads of laundry. And then she got to sit there and wash them, and then she got to take them all back. Like, if you want to go and sit in the car, fine. You know what I mean? Like, if that's what you got to do to appease your relationship. But it's still like, that's a lot on a parent, and you saying, oh, she could do it herself. No. Or at least, listen, this one needs a certain kind of detergent, right? I remember, when you got a baby, they need, what is
Wow,
it, Dreft or something like that. I didn't need Dreft. I was using regular old Tide, right? But Dreft was like $25 for this little bitty bottle.
Right. You need to be
You
conservative.
can help with that. You
do a couple of grains because. But anyways, go ahead. I'm having flashbacks. Go ahead. That stuff is not cheap at all.
I'm not far from a flashback myself. So it's like, wait a minute. Now we eventually found a soap that we could both use because she still needs something for sensitive skin. And so we use the Arm & Hammer sensitive skin now. And I love that, right? I'm like, oh, this is good for both of our clothes. So now there's a difference. But you only have to wash yours. You know what I mean? Especially if the non-custodial parent is not on child support, by all means. And even then, like, child support is based on those incomes. So you might only be paying $200. You know, $200 is not enough to take care of a kid, right?
$200 don't buy groceries
for one person. Like, everything has gone up, right? Inflation is real. And so we got to think about that. We have to think about, if we're sharing it, how much does this cost? And if we split it in half for our child, like, can you do that part? Like, it shouldn't all be on one parent. And then we have to also be realistic as the custodial parent, they still have rent to pay, right? If they living on their own, like, there's still things that's going on in their lives. Now, that don't take away from taking care of the child, but when you looking at extracurricular activities, we got to think about the non-custodial parents' budget, not for the stuff that they need, but the stuff that they want. All right, so we're listening to The Real on Parenting on KCCR Brownstone Worldwide. Thank you for joining us. So Danielle, let's talk about, like, how we can help. Like, let's help parents do this. Like, what are the communication or the co-parenting difficulties that arise that we got to be aware of?
Well, one of them is kind of the default, and kind of what we've been speaking on, is that communication. There's different communication styles. So one, learning what your partner or ex-partner's communication style is. And
partnering, because we're still raising the kid, right? So it's still partnering.
Yes. So, but learning what their communication style is, and a lot of people default think like, oh, I'm whipping out or I'm hunking out because I'm doing. No, everybody communicates differently. You may have a person who, like for me, I'm a very task-oriented person. Then you'll do boom, 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 boom. Okay, I got it. You come with extra words after two. I'm like, what? What? Like, the brain stops functioning. The ears shut off. I just see your mouth. That's what I hear. So whereas my husband, he like all the words, and I'm like, get to the point. But so our communication styles are different. So for me, especially when we're talking about those hot topics, I make it a point for me to be mindful of how I'm communicating with him. For me, I call it over communicating because I don't use all them damn words. But to make sure that I know that he's understanding where I'm coming from, what I'm saying, I do have to communicate in that way. And for him, I don't actually know, he does do it. He's learned to do it. We've been together forever, but he's learned to do it. But that took time. So being realistic in regards to how your partner communicates and work on communicating in that way. It doesn't mean that they're gonna home like yes and jump on board, but you more than likely will see a different or a shift on how they respond back to you.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think about the conflicts that arise, because of how we communicate or the lack of communicating by us, right? And we have to take that into consideration. Like, when we do not communicate effectively, it creates conflicts. And on top of conflicts that's already there, right? Because people have,
they are there, yes.
People have different values. People have different belief systems. We have different approaches to parenting, right? You may not spank. They may spank. You may feel like, they may be completely against gentle parenting, right? Going off of the old school, this is how I was raised parenting. And you might be like, but that don't work for our kid, right? A lot of people are in denial about maybe developmental challenges that their children have, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have the non-custodial parent going, all they need is a whooping.
Right.
And the custodial parent is going, I would be in jail if I spanked them for everything. Can't do that, right? And so all these conflicts that are already there that lead to disagreements and more conflicts over discipline, over the rules, over the routines for the children. You understand what I'm saying? Like things can get out of hand really fast. And so when we're not communicating, the conflicts compound, and we got to get better at that.
And a part of that, that I won't say kind of, that is telltale, is when your kids start running amok. When your kids start doing things that you know they know better.
Yes.
I always tell parents is, what's going on with us? What are we doing or not doing that's making our child confused, that's making our child behave the way that they're behaving? At the end of the day, yes, it's still a choice. Your child obviously knows right from wrong. However, there does come a place where the child doesn't necessarily know how to effectively communicate what exactly is going on that's resulting in them feeling the way that they're feeling by way of coming through by way of their behavior. So when your child is not being the child that you are raising, if you know what I mean,
right,
then check in with you first. And it's a humbling experience when you check in with you first, but you're real honest with you. Because obviously we know we're not perfect, and there's aspects of you, just for being you as an individual, that's negatively impacting your parenting of your child.
Yes, absolutely.
So be real with you.
Also the manipulation of your child. Like when your child is not acting right at the other parents, right, or they're acting out, and again, you know your kid, sometimes it's manipulation, and you have to be open to that fact, right? Everything is not daddy or mommy did this. Some things is how can I work this situation into my best advantage?
Of course, yes. There's very, very true and very, very real. Yes, they gonna get what they want. Right. They gonna be, mama said this, daddy said this. Especially if the parents don't communicate. Yes. Especially if they don't communicate.
And I think that another thing that we have to be considerate of, because it makes co-parenting difficult, is the emotional baggage that both of us are bringing into the relationship, right? Even if we're broken up, we have a relationship, right? We're still a family because we got these kids that say, hey, we share DNA around here. So we're still a family. So
they still are. Exactly.
So those lingering emotions from the breakup and that, or the divorce, or, you know, whatever the case may be, and by emotions, it could be like, I still want you, but it could be the anger of, you know, whatever the situation was. Like emotions, there's a wide gamut. Like we can't just say, I think people default to, oh, they must still want you. No, they're still hurt by you, right? And so when we're trying to separate our personal emotional issues from our parenting, that creates an atmosphere. Well, if we do it successfully, it creates a great atmosphere for co-parenting. If we don't, it creates a bigger chance of single parenting. Yeah. And I think that's something that we got to remember. Like, that unresolved emotional baggage can hinder cooperation and compromise and well-being and, you know, decision making, all of that.
Yeah, it's kind of like when they say like sex clouds your vision. It's the same thing.
Yes.
You do need to work on your emotional stuff. And once again, you know, your kids, they see it. They don't know it specifically. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is this. But your actions or non-action is seen by your children.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, co-parenting in general can be very, very difficult. But it can be done with grace. It can be done respectfully. It can be done in such a way that when you start throwing out titles, step parent, step mom, and all this thing, people are like, what? It can be that way. I've experienced both. My stepmom, that's my homie, but even my stepmom with my mom, you would never assume or even think that was my step anything. Right. Just by their relationship. I'm not saying
I love that. I love that for us because our moms and our bonus moms really do get along. Right. It's like my mom and bonus mom are not the best of friends or anything, but when they see each other, it's all love. And exactly. I try to remember that, it really can be an amazing situation. It doesn't have to be harsh.
Yes, but something to keep in mind though is that when you have especially younger children, mm-hmm. it's challenging. It is challenging. So even with my personal experience of being a bonus mom, that's what I call myself, and now that the adult children and just the shifts and changes of the relationship and just the dynamic with their mom and me is totally different. And I'm saying as it should, because they're grown now, you know what I mean?
Right.
But if you bring back one situation, girl, the real present, given the situation. But it's like any other relationship. It takes work. But with that, it goes back to your emotional stuff plays a big impact on what the relationship at the current moments for the dynamics would look like.
Absolutely. So Danielle, because I don't want to forget this, let's talk about like the power struggle in co-parenting, because you kind of touched on it. Give us some best practices, I guess, to limit the power struggle.
I'm looking down because I'm thinking of you. Don't go to jail. Don't go to jail.
I'm like, don't put you on the spot. So that power struggle can be a lot, right?
No, it is a lot. It's because
I found myself having to stop it recently. Okay, let me just share. Because Kayla's dad told her he was going to teach her how to drive. She 10. And he was like, it's what did he say? It's a skill she needs. What if something happens? I'm like, but she only with people that can drive. Like, why does she need to have to drive?
She was like 13. Okay, I got 10.
Which is the age he taught his other daughter to drive. So I actually understand, like, I'm like, okay, just knowing the skills or whatever.
Right.
And so everything in me is like, because I used to work for Automobile Club. So, and I worked in the damage assessment total loss center, right? So I'm like, the number one killer of teenagers is car accidents. And I'm thinking, also, because he wanted to
rolling the stats.
Right. Because I'm like, okay, let me get my facts together before I start talking about this. I'm also thinking because she wants to ride on the back of his motorcycle. And I was just like, absolutely not. I have a friend who's a mortician who's like, all her decapitations are from motorcycle accidents. So I'm just like, we ain't doing that, right? But I also have to understand he gets to parent just like me. Right. He gets to make some decisions. He didn't want her. He gets to parent just like me. He has the right to parent just like I do. Whether I feel he's doing 50-50, whether I feel he's a good parent, whether I feel he is emotionally there for me, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't matter. He gets to parent completely independent of how I feel about something. So I'm like, okay, Kiana, it's not like he gonna say, let me put you on the 405 or the 10, right. Or he's not gonna do that, right? And so I'm like, okay, it ain't my car that's gonna get towed up if something happens, right? Now it is my kid that would get towed up. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking of that aspect too. So then I said, okay, He'll probably take her to an open space, no other cars.
Right.
So
right.
it's a controlled environment, right?
Yes. I was like, you're talking stuff through it. Right. I mean,
everything in me was like, no.
The default reaction. So whenever you have that quick response, that's your default reaction. That means that you took minimal to no time to actually think about what your response would be and any of the considerations. So I was still saying 10 is young. However, I did think, well, okay, given his line of work,
okay,
the obvious, he is not going to be, they're not going to be on the streets. They're going to be, I'm assuming, in a parking lot somewhere. You know, it's kind of like what you said. So it's like when, I'm going to give everybody an assignment. Let's work on not saying what our initial thought is.
Mm-hmm.
The initial thought is always the default reaction. Pause. You can say it in your head, but don't make it come out your mouth. Pause. Right. Take a breath. Granted, it still may be that answer or that.
Oh yeah, I definitely still said no.
However, the difference is that as you continue to practice that, mm-hmm. you will have more time where you're rationally thinking about the whole situation,
right?
And whatever nuances, if you will. And let me say this: it takes a lot of self-control, okay? Because when we say what we said, we said what we said. So I want you to, even if you got to go, you know, whatever you need to do to make sure it don't come out your mouth, that's what you need. Obviously, that's safe and okay. But that's what I need for you to do because your kids see that.
Yes.
Your kid sees that. We should never be reacting to anything unless it's life or death, okay? But if it's simple questions, if it's questions related to life in general, you know, are they going to the park? You know, we should not be reacting to those.
Yes.
Even if it's going to mess up what you already have scheduled, I don't care. If anything, say, let me get back to you.
Right. And take a minute.
You take a minute. You ain't got to say take a minute.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like that was like the second step. Right. I'm gonna call you back.
Yes, exactly.
So
take that time because it's kind of, and then from there you're gonna be mentally tussling with yourself because you're working on doing something different than what you default do.
Yeah.
But as you shift in doing that, you will see a shift in the dynamic with your partner as parenting your child or children.
Now I want to also point out another power struggle, and this one gonna upset some folks, and then we gonna close out because
okay.
I don't like to keep going when I know people in their cars cussing me out, right? So another thing that we have to be mindful of, and I'm not going to say particularly ladies because this really does flip-flop back and forth.
Okay.
Struggle parenting as it relates to their significant other. I don't want you around my kid. Listen, if that person is not doing anything to harm your child, you just don't want another person around. Right. You don't get to choose who that man or woman is now dating. You don't get to choose who they're spending time with. Now, I do understand the genuine concern of it's been 3 years. This your seventh significant other. Seventh person you didn't introduce this. In that case, I get it, right?
Right.
And then that's still not, you can't have people over. That's more of, hey, we have this child together, and I'm thinking of what is the message we're sending them by having people in and out of our lives. So, can we make a rule that, we date someone for a couple of months before we introduce the kids? Like, we can talk about them and all that, but we can even be at a function and all of us are there and they just see mommy or daddy's friend. But right. To have it where it's like, oh, this is my significant other, when you are kind of habitually having significant others, I get that. but you cannot control who that person is with. And I think that a lot of us need to let that go.
I was just about to say, you need to let that go.
What's best for the kids?
Right. At the end of the day, you have no control over what your partner does or does not do, even if it's in the benefit of the child. You have no, let me say this, you have no control over what your child does. And I say that in the sense that what they choose to do is what they choose to do, and you respond accordingly, whether that's a reward or a reprimand. But yes. I digress. In regards to that, in regards to your partner's partner, significant other. Wait, let me back up. When you first said that, my automatic thought, that's why I held on to it, but now I'm gonna say it, I took some time to think about it, was this. You chose that person to have a child with. Whatever the situation, circumstance, or whatever that may be, 10, 12, 14, 10 months, whatever years ago, you chose that person, okay? And whatever their things were, whether you hope that things would change, whatever it is, you chose that person. So with being with that person, you guys have a child together. So, and I'm saying this not to excuse actions. I'm not saying this to make it right. I am not saying that. I'm saying this from the perspective of you made a specific decision or a certain decision. And that decision is now kind of like, you have to deal with the aftermath of it. Not accepting it, but you have to acknowledge and deal with it according to how it presents in that moment. So if you were with someone who was doing all the things, unfortunately, more times than not, that's not going to abruptly stop. That's going to be something that you're going to have to address over time as it presents itself.
Right.
So, and I'm going off the fact of, having many people, I don't know what it's called these days. I don't know, playing the field, I don't know what it's called. But you have many people. Like you're dating many people. There needs to be that conversation between both parents that, okay, if the person that you're interested in at this moment is not someone that you see in a long-term relationship, then we should agree that those specific people or those individuals do not have access to our child.
Right.
Whatsoever. Because also there's that respect factor. Even if you have a boy or if you have a girl, there's that respect factor, because within that, as parents, we are a teacher of life from A to Z. So if you over here running amok and you have a boy or a son, what are you portraying and modeling for your son? And what are you portraying or modeling for your daughter? What are the messages your actions are giving your child? And there's some people that, well, I didn't tell them that. No, you didn't have to tell them, you showed them.
Showed them. Yeah. And what you do speaks so loud, they don't hear what you say anyway.
Right. So there needs to be that mutual respect amongst both parents, that you guys both agree that when you are dating, if this is not a person that is going to be it doesn't mean you got to get married. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just, right. If you're not this being a person that's going to be a long-term part of your life, it doesn't mean that you got to come, because things happen, they can break up. But then there is that common agreement that, okay, they don't need to meet our child or our children. And I would say, and that's the hard line there.
But at the end of, no, not at the end of the day. I'm kind of over that term. In this present moment, right? In this present moment, you cannot choose who they go. Now, listen, I understand the need to try. Like, let me find somebody that we all gonna love. Let me find somebody for you that I get along with, our child love, and is perfect for you. Like, let me help you find that person. I get that feeling, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, we cannot choose that person for them. So we have to back up. We have to, and I think that people really forget that the other parent does not owe it to you to choose the person you would like. They don't owe it to you to be single until you're comfortable. They don't owe it to you only thing that they really owe is the respect of introducing you to who is going to be around your child, and they owe it to their child to pick someone that is going to be a great person to your child, right? And so outside of, absolute dangerous issues or things where your child is being harmed emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, right? Spiritually, because we've had to address that as well. Then let it go, and you keep teaching your child. You keep teaching your daughter how to be a lady. You keep teaching your son how to be a man, right? You keep teaching these things, and it doesn't. And I'm not saying mommies teach your daughters how to be a lady, daddies teach your sons how to be a man, right? Like, I get it. There are certain things that the opposite sex just can't teach our children. However, as they're growing up, they just need to learn how to be respectful young people, productive citizens, right? And then what you give extra. Now, if mommy is dating someone and now all of a sudden the ladylike things that she used to do are changing. Now she's going outside, with her house shoes and her house coat and her bonnet on, and she at Target. That's different. I understand. That's when you say, "Hey, you know what? This is what ladies do." Okay, because they might want to sponsor. I'm just saying. Okay, well, whether she at Target or Walmart, I don't care where she at. She can Costco. The point is, Dad, you can say, like, listen, I want you to know that that's not how you should be outside, right? But sometimes we date people and we start to assimilate, and it's not good for our kids. And I'm just using that as an example. There are all kind of interesting examples that we could use. But at the end of the day, you cannot choose that person. What you can do is keep open communication with your kids. What you can do is when they come back from visits, say, did anything happen that made you happy? Did anything happen that made you sad? And just address those things.
Right. I want to cover it all. Cover it all. So that we can go to someone else. Don't bait your children for information,
Right. Because that's not the same as what they say. And then where y'all go? And then what happened? And that's not the same. You had a child with this person. Trust them to make healthy decisions for your child. All right. All right. So can we end this episode? Because I know somebody mad. And if you go to Target or Costco or Walmart or Sam's looking like that, stop. Okay?
Yes.
Just stop. All right. Danielle, thank you for rolling with me. You are the best co-pilot. I appreciate you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
You guys have joined us. Thank you for joining us on the Real on Parenting. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace. Yeah.